Welcome to Mid-Century Living, your weekly nostalgia podcast about the best of technology and culture from the mid-20th century.
Welcome to episode 28 of Mid-Century Living, the show where we talk all about the best of the mid-20th century and how to add the vintage vibes to your modern life. We are hosts Gonzalo
and Jackie. Thank you for joining us today. I've picked out a short and sweet topic for this week's episode. I thought we could all use a break from the hard science of the last two episodes. But first, Gonzalo, how was your week? Did you have a happy Easter?
I did. It was fun. It was not... What's the word? Low-key. I was saying it's not high-key, but I was like, I can't think. No, it was fun. We just hung out at my parents' house. They were up visiting family up north, and they got in like that Saturday night. So like Sunday morning, we just went to church and then had lunch and play cards, which is what we usually do. So Easter was fun. But actually, I'm ready for this next upcoming week because it's the eclipse week. And what I keep thinking, and I've been meaning to take a picture of it, but I know that phone pictures of this, you won't see it. But every morning this week on my drive to work, because I leave the house before anybody else in the world is awake, I've been seeing a Cheshire cat moon.
Oh, I love those.
I know. So I've been trying. I was like, take a picture, but I was like, you can never see them well.
No.
Plus, I'm driving.
Yes.
Responsible. But I was like, I wonder, this is really cool. How come we keep getting several days of these? And then I go, well, duh, the eclipse is next week. So, are you guys doing anything for the eclipse? Because we are doing a whole school thing, which I think is going to be hilarious when it's cloudy and stormy on Monday.
Is your school open? I've heard some of them are closing.
No, we'll be open. It's a regular school day, but we're doing like a event thing. So like everyone's going to go and see the eclipse, and then we'll go back to class.
Are you providing everyone these special eclipse glasses that look like 3D glasses?
To be determined. I'm assuming so. I haven't prepared. I'm waiting for an email that says what to do.
I'm super excited about it, which is probably because it's not going to happen, which I'm disappointed about. But like, I went to the library and I got my special eclipse glasses, and I bought an outfit so that I'll have an outfit all picked out. And there are some local events around, but I'm not 1,000% sure if I want to go to any of them. I hear like a lot of people are driving in and just like staying in Dallas for the weekend specifically to watch it.
Oh yeah, because you're in the path of totality.
I sure am.
Yeah.
So that's probably why I'm excited, because it makes it feel special. But yeah, hopefully I'll be able to see it. I really hope it isn't cloudy. But I don't have like any very specific plans except for that I have an outfit picked out and I already have my glasses. Over here somewhere.
Listeners, she is getting her glasses to show me. And she's putting them on.
Oh, you can't see at all.
Well, no, that's the whole point. Oh my
goodness, it's nothing.
You can also use a welding mask if you don't have glasses.
Yeah,
same thing.
You could. It I think that I'm being trolled. It's like a plastic. Like, I think this is actually just construction paper.
No, you'll be able to see light through it. Like, go and look at the light bulb.
Yeah, I can kind of see my light bulb filaments.
Yeah, that's why you can also use a welding mask. Disclaimer: don't, just in case. Although I guess by the time that this airs, the eclipse already happened. So go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I feel like that'll be harder to track down. But no, I'm excited.
How was your Easter though?
My Easter was good. I did another whirlwind trip where I spent 24 hours in Katy so I could see my family. I made 2 lamb cakes this year, one for Instagram and one for actual Easter. And the one for Instagram turned out really well, and then the one for actual Easter did not do as well. I think I just need to like pick a recipe and stick with it. Probably. I shouldn't really experiment with them that much.
So I really enjoyed the black fleece sheep on Instagram. So
thank you.
Especially that little post you had, which was being built.
I made it. What he's trying to explain is I made a stop motion reel, time lapse kind of thing. Yeah. On Instagram of me like piping the fur onto my black sheep Instagram lamb, which I actually brought to work and ate. But I just don't know if people liked it or not. It's tricky. No one went back for seconds but me, and that's just something that I'm thinking about a lot now because I'm thinking about food a lot. But I assume that that means because you know how you always like stuff you make,
Mm-hmm.
even if it sucks. Sometimes, like you're always going to give
I
your.
don't know. I hated my lunch this week, but you've already heard about that.
That's true. You did. That's true. You did hate your lunch this week, but I feel like if you put the effort in, like it always tastes a little bit better to you than it does to an impartial person who just comes in and eats it like it's food.
True, true. I will. Here's my real question though. Did it turn your coworkers' mouths black?
Not as black as I thought that it would. I put an
Okay.
entire tube of gel food coloring in that frosting, and it was not as it like I really warned everyone. I'm like, if you're worried about turning your mouth black, scrape the frosting off because it is. I did not go light on the food coloring, and it was actually not bad.
So when I worked in an office, I made a cake for my then boss's retirement, and it was shades of blues. So like the frosting was all piped buttercream, but it was different shades of blues and little stars. So the whole
Oh,
cake was 100% covered in little stars of buttercream, but different shades of blue. Anyway, I didn't think about it beforehand, and no one realized it until we were halfway through the cake. Everybody's mouth turned blue. Every single person who had cake at the office that day, their mouths were blue. And
yeah.
because our office was gigantic and only my team ate the cake, only my team, which back then was called the maroon team had blue mouths.
That's so funny. Yeah, it wasn't as bad. I warned, I guess I was just being too dramatic about it, but, or maybe everyone was eating it a little bit more delicately, knowing that in mind, but no one walked around with like all black mouths.
What was the actual cake itself?
It was pumpkin,
Okay.
but like the thing is with lamb cakes, you really need like a pound cake in there because otherwise it won't stand up on its own. So I
Mm-hmm,
read
mm-hmm.
this like hack slash vintage recipe on like how to turn any boxed cake mix into a sour cream cake by like adding sour cream and like extra eggs and like basically make pound cake texture. I thought it was delicious, but it was freaking cute and took all day and I was like really happy with it. And then the cake I brought down to my parents was like slightly underbaked and wouldn't stand up, but everyone thought it was delicious and they all had seconds.
Mm.
So I just need to figure out for next year like a balance between flavor and looks.
Have you ever made pound cake, like actual pound cake?
No.
I've always wanted to make actual pound cake, but then I feel like I might eat the whole cake by myself, and I don't want to eat a pound of everything.
Yeah, if you should bring it to work if you do. But yeah, like where the actual traditional recipe where it's a pound of all the ingredients.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, bring it to work. That's the excuse.
I've never baked for work after leaving an office setting, because when I worked in an office, when I worked in a small firm, then it was fine because it was 14 people total. Then I could make a cake and I could put it in the break room and then be like, everyone go have some.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I worked in a large office, I used to make cookies because they were individually
Mm-hmm.
things. And then just my team would eat them. And then every now and again, some people would. Although there was one person who didn't work for my team, which really annoyed me.
Yeah, I don't mind people from other departments coming and stealing our snacks, but I can see how that could be a personal thing if you made it. I like being known as the snacks department, like that people come to our department for snacks.
I was fine with anybody else. That it was just that one specific office person.
Well, that happens.
I can say that now, right? They don't work. I don't work in that even field anymore.
Yeah, you can say that.
But anyway, should we maybe talk a little bit more about what we're talking about today?
Yes. So, basically, this entire episode was inspired by my drive down to Houston for Easter because this is my favorite time of year to drive around Texas because all of the wildflowers are out. The entire drive, which is normally just very flat and boring to look at, is covered in gorgeous wildflowers right now. So, that was my main inspiration for this episode. So, today we're going to talk about Texas wildflowers along the highways.
I love the wildflowers, and I love that a lot of the so where I live, I'm not that far removed from no civilization. So if I drive a little bit out west, there's like three main like colors, and I don't know if they're the same flowers or not, but there's always pinks, yellows, and blues. And I was walking. I started, cardio and all that stuff, which I don't like doing, but it's my doctor said I need to. So I started doing cardio, and on my walk to the trail by my house, one of my neighbors planted bluebonnets. And I was walking around, and I was like, I don't know, listening to probably our podcast, to be honest. And I stumbled upon, and I go, "Oh, that looks like a bluebonnet. Oh, that's quite cool. It just kind of grew here because it was like removed from the rest." And I'm looking down on the ground as I'm walking, and I'm like, "Oh, 2 bluebonnets. Oh, 4 bluebonnets." And then I was like, "Oh, these are purposely planted here."
Yep, these were a deliberate choice.
I haven't. So bluebonnets. Just before we keep going,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you'll get into what they are, but we have a friend of the podcast who guest hosted once, Alex. His wife is a really good gardener, and one Christmas I sent her bluebonnet seeds, and they
Aw.
don't live in Texas. And apparently, bluebonnets don't grow well outside of Texas.
Yeah, I wondered about that. I know that they thrive here, which I don't know how they can do it because it's very hard to live in Texas during most of the year.
Mm-hmm.
But that's actually why I've been thinking about planting wildflowers, is because I love flowers, but I suck at gardening. And I think wildflowers might be the answer because they
Yeah.
thrive in neglect.
Oh, that's smart. I should do that with my flower bed because right now it's just weeds.
Yeah, that's what I was actually thinking, just like taking all the weeds out of my neglected flower beds and putting wildflowers in it and hoping for the best because they
Hmm.
want to be left alone.
I don't do well with planting, but why don't we talk a little bit about what a bluebonnet is, though?
So, bluebonnets, the flower actually gets its name from the shape of the petals, that in theory resemble the bonnets worn by pioneer women to shield themselves from the sun. Bluebonnet season ramps up in March and peaks in early April, which is why I got to see them all driving down for Easter. There are actually 7 different species of bluebonnets, and all of
Huh.
them are the Texas state flower. There's actually not one specific bluebonnet.
I didn't
Um,
realize there were multiple.
Yes, they all look similar, but there are 7 different species. And fun fact, there used to be one specific species that was named the state flower of Texas, but people started picking different favorites. The Lupinus texensis emerged as the favorite of most Texans. So in 1971, the Texas legislature actually made any similar species of Lupinus that could be found in Texas the state flower. So any bluebonnet
Interesting.
you see is the state flower of Texas.
Interesting.
So, have you heard that it's illegal to pick bluebonnets in Texas?
I have, and I always thought it was, and I'm hoping you're going to tell me it's not. But I do remember having a family friend who we went over to their house for like dinner when we were little or something. Like, it was my parents' friends, and they had bluebonnets, and I go, "Oh, you can't have that."
I've actually thought, yeah, it's been common knowledge around here, and there is actually a house I drove by the other day that their entire yard was bluebonnets, and boyfriend made a joke about like, oh, they're just using that as an excuse not to mow their lawn.
Oh, that's
Because
smart.
but turns out it's actually a myth, and there are no specific laws prohibiting picking or mowing bluebonnets.
Oh,
The only way that it would be kind of illegal to do so is if you were picking bluebonnets on someone's private property. That's illegal, but just because of trespassing laws. And it's also illegal to destroy any plant life in Texas state parks.
and
But
yes,
that's
and
also illegal for other reasons. But
yes, and you never want to mess with Texas state parks or national forests for that matter, because you will get a ticket.
for sure.
So how do we end up with so many bluebonnets then along the highways? Because I figured that they grow there because people are too afraid to pick them because it's illegal. But if it's not illegal, how come they're all over the place?
Well, we can actually thank Lady Bird Johnson for that. So, if you were not, for anyone who's not super learned in first ladies, Claudia Lady Bird Johnson was the wife of Lyndon Baines Johnson, commonly known as LBJ, who was the 36th President of the United States. She served as the second lady from 1961 to 1963 when her husband was vice president, and served as the first lady from 1963 to 1969. She went on several trips to the American West, the Rocky Mountains, and Utah, and it ignited an interest in conservation in her. In 1964, she said that natural beauty is our greatest resource and must be protected. And right after the 1964 election, she decided that the whole field of conservation and beautification had the greatest appeal to her.
Hmm.
She emphasized, however, that beautification meant much more than just beautification. It meant clean water, clean air, clean roadsides, safe waste disposal, and preservation of valued old landmarks, as well as great parks and wilderness eras,
Oh,
or
that's deep.
wilderness areas, quote unquote. So it wasn't just making things pretty; it was making things clean and just preserving nature in general. And so she really helped establish the public environmental movement in the 1960s. So she started off trying to just beautify Washington, D.C. while she was living in the White House. So she started something called the Capitol Beautification Project, which led to planting millions of flowers, usually on National Park Service land, along roadways and around the Capitol. She is quoted as saying, "Where flowers bloom, so does hope." So she influenced the president to demand more far-sighted conservation legislation, and she personally lobbied Congress for the president's full range of environmental initiatives. And she took the lead in calling for the passage of the Highway Beautification Act, which uh, gets us closer to the topic of this podcast. So the Highway Beautification Act gets its genesis in LBJ's State of the Union message from January 1965, where he mentioned a program to beautify the nation's highways. This act mainly called for the control of outdoor advertising billboards along the nation's growing interstate highway system, and it also required that junkyards along primary highways be either removed or screened, and encouraged scenic enhancement of roadside development.
So was it like, okay, you say that it acts for control of outdoor advertising in the form of billboards, and I'm guessing that means that before this act they were a lot worse problem than they are, because they're currently a huge problem. Anybody who's
Yeah.
in Texas knows the Bucky's signs. I
I'm
mean,
not sure. It said specific billboards. I'm guessing
uh,
it's actually the content of the billboards, not so much the.
quantity.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, because I don't want to be driving down the highway and like see a giant,
Yeah.
I can't say the words because we are family friendly.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think it was. I don't think it's the volume though that might have part of it. I think it's mainly the content of the billboards. Anyway, this bill was nicknamed Lady Bird's bill since it was kind of her pet project. She believed that beauty and generally clean streets would make the U.S. a better place to live, and the act passed in the Senate in September 1965 and was signed by the president on October 22nd, 1965.
Cool. Yeah. So is that where all the highway bluebonnets come from?
Actually, yes. So after leaving Washington, Lady Bird focused all her efforts on Texas. Her focus was on the ecological advantages well as the beauty of native Texas plants. So starting in 1969, she spent 20 years encouraging the beautification of Texas highways specifically. And she personally awarded highway districts that used native Texas plants and scenery to beautify their highways.
Hmm.
So we have Ladybird to thank for all of the colorful wildflowers that make driving the highways in the spring so pleasant, and for all those bluebonnet fields that people use for photo ops so often.
Oh well, thank you, Lady Bird. People don't take photos though in the bluebonnet fields.
Oh
Big
no,
no
you
no.
can if you want.
Yes, but I advise against it, not because they're bluebonnets, but because in the great state of Texas, one of the little animal creature friends that we have here in Earth that loves bluebonnets is the Texas rattlesnake.
Oh, are bluebonnet fields full of rattlesnakes?
That's why they advise against squatting down into a field of bluebonnets to take a picture, because rattlesnakes really enjoy that.
I had no idea.
Really?
I
Well,
really had no idea. And I spend most of my life thinking about how not to end up with snakes. Well, shoot, now I'm rethinking my whole wildflower initiative.
no. Wildflowers are good. I'm just saying, don't stop on the side of the road, because
Oh,
when you have land, like say you have your yard and you have wildflowers, you can control what animals go and don't go into your yard to an extent, right? So you can plan against the snakes coming in. But if you are driving down I-35 and you're like, ooh, fields, photo op, and you stop, more than likely you're not going to look around. Okay, it's safe. You're just going to go squat, take a picture, and leave.
right.
So
Yeah. Well, good to know. Yeah, I suppose in any wild fields you should just assume it's full of snakes because it's
yeah,
Texas.
the more you know.
The more you know. So, in addition to that lasting legacy, she also created a National Wildflower Research Center in 1982 on the occasion of her 70th birthday, which is located at the University of Texas at Austin. It was founded as the National Wildflower Research Center, but was renamed the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center in 1997. They also at UT Austin have an LBJ School of Public Affairs and Presidential Library, so they're kind of like, it's nice that they're together. And the center is still open and has evolved over time. So when it first started, it was focused specifically on Texas wildflowers, but now it's a major botanic garden and research unit known for plant conservation, landscape restoration, and sustainable approaches to landscape design.
So I was gonna say that there's a city in Texas, it's called Johnson City, and I always thought that it had to do with LBJ because I knew that LBJ was from Texas, and if anybody here grew up watching, King of the Hill, their dog was named Lady Bird after Lady Bird Johnson. So like LBJ is very Texas centric. Then there's a place called Johnson City, which I always thought was where he grew up or where he was born or where the LBJ ranch is, but it's not. It was founded by a man named James P. Johnson in 1879. Oh, hold on a second. It is the hometown of Lyndon B. Johnson. We do research in this podcast. Should I redo all that?
We do research. Well, no, I did not know that. That is neat.
Yes.
But anyway.
So I was right, then I was wrong, and now I was right again.
Yes. Well, anyway, now that we're caught up to the present, I guess it's time for our etiquette segment. So, Gonzalo, what do we have today?
Awesome. Okay, so a few episodes ago, we shared a little etiquette on informal dinner party etiquette from Amy Vanderbilt's Complete Guide to Etiquette from 1957. And I thought that today we should continue this chapter, but this time talk a little bit about the semi-formal dinner. Now, the truly formal dinner, like with stiff elegance, is not really what the average American thinks of when they think a dinner party, because that's the one that like is more like white linen and fancy restaurant. Think Edwardian, right? If you're if you're hosting a semi-formal dinner, that's like your traditional dinner party, here's some tips for it. So a formal dinner, typically you have your very specific courses. So like you have your soup course, your fish or seafood course, which sometimes comes first if it's oysters Rockefeller, which are delicious, by the way.
Yeah, they are.
Soup course, seafood course, followed by a hot meat with vegetables as a main dish, then a salad course, then dessert, and then at the end of the evening, little cakes like petit fours with a demi-tasse served in the living room. So that's typically a formal dinner. But if you are hosting a semi-formal dinner, which is what most people will host, the average American won't host, they're not really as complicated. So prepare yourself for a semi-formal dinner by making a menu that has an entree of some kind that can be hot or cold soup, typically served in like a cup or a cream soup bowl or a small pottery bowl, which contrasts with a formal dinner, which is usually a flat dish. And then you have a main course, with can be fish, can be meat, but both are not usually served. There's one course only. And a lot of times in this type of setting, you can offer second helpings, which are a big no-no for formal dinners.
Interesting.
Yeah, and instead of having a separate course for salad, a lot of times in this type of settings, you will serve the salad at the same time as your dish. And you cap it all off with dessert with after-dinner coffee poured by the hostess, and that's always at the table, not in the living room, which I always equate it with like Edwardian, like, shall we go through?
Yes. Yeah,
Question.
I'm also thinking about Downton Abbey while you're discussing. That's my frame of reference for formal dinners.
Well, that would be an Edwardian type formal dinner because the Downton Abbey is set during the reign of King Edward. So, anyway, when you're setting the table, set it on a damask cloth. Although the late 1950s, we start seeing a little bit more individual placemats becoming popular, which growing up, when we set the table for dinner every night when I was younger and lived at my parents' house, we always set placemats.
Yeah, I feel like we had them for casual dinners, but for formal dinners, my parents, my mother really, who makes the table, usually goes with tablecloths. Or though I suppose our formal dinners are semi-formal dinners because you're allowed to have seconds.
See, so when my mom hosts at her house, they're semi-formal. If I host dinner at my parents' house, which is always only for like Christmas Eve dinner, I make them formal, and my mom's like, set the table. And I go, okay, but I'm gonna use the special china that you never use, and I'm gonna use a crystal. And she's like, you're gonna break them, and I go, we have them, let's use them.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes,
If you have it, use it. Everyone use your china.
yes, I don't have fine china at my house. Uh, but speaking of that, when you're setting your table, all right, don't worry about your fine matching china for your semi-formal dinner. Okay, clear matching crystal also is things that you don't really need. Those are the kind of stuff that takes up space because you only have them just for quote company, right?
Mm-hmm.
Amy says, quote, the hostesses who made a fetish of such things often had set company dinners too, devoid of imagination and deadly dull, end quote. So don't worry about your fine matching china. Regular plates are fine. Also, when setting your table, candles, you can use candles, but color ones are fine. Other shapes are fine. The taper white candle is more of a formal setting for your formal dinner. And tables should have a centerpiece. In a semi-formal setting, it's usually flowers or greenery or a ceramic of some kind. And if you are in a dining room that has a table set against the wall, the centerpiece does not go on the center of the table. It goes against the wall on the center of the table. So you have more space.
Yeah, makes sense.
Also, if your table is small, eschew the centerpiece and instead use your serving dishes as focal points.
Interesting. Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And just one quick thing for serving, the traditional, according to Amy Vanderbilt, and also from what I know from serving, serve from the left, remove from the right.
Yes.
Yes. And that is how to host a semi-formal. There's also one little thing that she talks about, which I want to bring up, but something that's not very common nowadays is if you have a semi-formal dinner party whilst having live-in help, which I know is not the norm today, especially if you're having semi-formal or informal dinners. But here's what Amy Vanderbilt had to say about it. Pretension is so very uncomfortable. If a family has just one servant, it is foolish to try to turn her into a cook, waitress, nurse, and lady's maid.
Fair enough.
Yes. A company dinner that is to be both prepared and served by one maid should be kept fairly simple. 3 courses, that's it.
All right.
So, yeah. And that is some very quick tips on how to host a semi-formal dinner party. So what do
I
you
think these are super useful. It doesn't sound that much more complicated than the informal dinners from a couple episodes ago.
No, it does not. This is a more, to me, the difference is this is more structured as like how to set it up. But
Yeah, a little bit. I like how over the course of all of our episodes, because I brought buffet dinners to an episode once as an etiquette tip, so we've gone from like buffet style to informal dinners to semi-formal dinners. So we're just working our way up.
maybe we need to do formal next.
Yeah, we should probably do formal.
Yeah. But also, I had to put something food related because we can't have an episode of our podcast and not talk about food.
No, we got to talk about it we got to have food chat. The fans demand it.
So, what do you think? Should we keep these tips, these etiquette tips?
Yes, 100%. I think we should keep all of the semi-formal dinner etiquette. I think this is all fabulous.
Perfect. Well, then, guys, I feel like you've heard it here first. We are putting the MCL podcast seal of approval on this chapter of Amy Vanderbilt's etiquette tips. And with that, it looks like we have landed our car next to the highway. That was a very bad transition. It looks like we have landed the plane. Thank you guys all for listening today. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to the show and tell a friend.
You can also follow us on Instagram at MCL Podcasts. This is the best place to send us feedback and episode suggestions, so send us a DM anytime.
Yep. Thanks for listening, guys, and we will talk to you again next week.
Bye!
Thank you for listening to Mid-Century Living. Please subscribe, tell your friends, and leave a review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also follow us on Instagram at MCL Podcast. See you next Friday.